Hi, everyone. Asia here with Live, Lead, and Inspire by Asia TV. And we are back with a really amazing show with my friend, Zeahlot Lopez. Zeahlot is a licensed and marriage family therapist, correct? And she has her own business called Vida Therapy. She is a marriage, family, and child counseling therapist, and she likes to bring the best self to life. And I can't wait to talk to her because she's got a lot of really great nuggets to share. She likes to talk about emotional intelligence. I know yesterday you just did a show on emotional, or not a show, a speech on emotional intelligence.
I did, yes, at the Urban League of Los Angeles.
Right. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what she does, and we're going to really just have fun today. So get ready, listen, and let's do this. So, Zeahlot, tell everybody a little bit more about you and, what got you into becoming an LMFT?
That's a great question. Besides just wanting to know yourself better, I was a licensed cosmetologist, or I have been for 13 years. And I was working in the shop, I was doing ladies' hair, I was doing highlights and blow dries, and that's what brought me to great conversation. I have this big thing where I love big talk. I'm not really a fan of small talk. And I started noticing that people started coming to the shop, not because of my skill or my highlights, but it was because of the conversation. So I thought to myself, I always was taught by my father that if I did something well, I should charge for it. So I went back to graduate school, and here I am 5 years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you said you were doing cosmetology for 13 years?
Or I have been for 13 years as of today.
Oh, wow. So you still do it today?
I still, but I definitely keep each in their own lane, of course, for legal reasons. If I ever have a hair or makeup client or a bride, they will always just be that. And if I ever have psychotherapy clients, they're always just psychotherapy clients.
Right.
But yes, I love to delve into both, and it brings joy to me for having both.
That's really interesting. So one thing I'm sure our viewers would even be interested in knowing is, how does hair and makeup, doing hair, doing makeup, how does that relate with, psychology and therapy?
So much so. So it's very interesting, but I feel that there's a deep connection with both. So with cosmetology, it's much more of a touch feel, and the person feels secure, they feel safe, they feel trust. As women, as men, if somebody's doing your hair, doing your eyebrows, eyebrows on fleek, whatever it may be, like, you need to trust them. That's my face. This is what people are going to see. And it's the same vulnerability level, just in a different dynamic that there is in the room with a secret space. As a psychotherapist, there's so much vulnerability in the room. You have to provide that space to let people actually open up. And it's the same thing with hair and makeup. They have to trust you and say, hey, my son's getting married. I need to look the best. And that's vulnerability.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I love that. So I think I'm going to have you come and do my hair and makeup for me, because you can tell that you have the best hair ever.
Thank
and I'm
you.
like, how does she know how to do her hair? Because I remember when I first met her. And so now I know her secret because she's already into this. So this is great. So let me ask you a question. When you started Vida Therapy, I know that you started to talk to people more in therapy, getting to know them. How did this lead you to understanding more about emotional intelligence? Because I have to tell you, and even the viewers, emotional intelligence is extremely important to know, especially for people who are in leadership and people who are in management and people who, even in everyday lives, to be able to understand our emotions and how to use them effectively. And so, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think it's interesting.
I couldn't agree more. The reason I noticed that there was a lack of resources or knowledge for emotional development is because, as a psychotherapist, but also having other careers in my lifetime, I noticed what was missing from that. It's the understanding of validation, right? It's the understanding of empathy versus sympathy, of knowing how to react versus responding. Right? So it's little things that I've learned along the way, especially in grad school or training as a psychotherapist, how to actively listen. All this plays a part in emotional intelligence, and it really falls back into the workplace. If you can't manage your emotions, you can't manage your money. And this is one of the biggest faults that corporations have. They don't know how to manage staff, or they don't know how to appropriately support them in a way that the employees feel loved and heard.
And you're absolutely right, because we see a lot of that in the HR field. I have friends who come in and they literally complain to me saying, my manager does not understand what I'm going through. My manager is extremely rude to me today. There's a lot of issues.
Right.
And you're right, because if they're not taking care of their emotions, if they don't know how to put their emotions in check, basically, right?
Check them at the door.
Exactly. Because you can't bring like a nasty attitude to the workplace or any place you go, any environment you're in, whether it's at a workplace, whether it's at a party, event, networking, whatever you're doing, you have to put your emotions in check. Yeah. And so what are some techniques that you would like to share with us on how we can put our emotions in check?
Yeah, one of the greatest ones is one of the best books I've ever read, and that can apply to the workplace, even though people might think they can't, is The 5 Love Languages.
Yes. I love that book.
Yes.
And I have all of those 5 love language books. Everyone that Gary
The one with children, the one with couples, absolutely.
Yes.
So what I absolutely love is knowing that as a management or as a supervisee, that we each have a different love language. And, besides the one of like physical touch, because we don't want any HR situations.
Right,
but besides that one, you can apply every single one of them in the workplace. You need to find out those that are working with you or perhaps even under you or under your organization or your leadership. What is their language? Does your employee feel most valuable and heard and validated with words? Is it a quick email, hey, you rock that presentation today? Or is it just a small tidbit of a gift? Hey, got you new Post-its. I got you new pencils for your desk, or whatever it may be.
Right.
So it's knowing what does the person need and how do they feel loved, heard, and honored.
And you're absolutely right about that. So there's a book that Gary Chapman came out with specifically for the workplace. I don't know if you've seen it, but I actually bought it because I bought every book of his that he wrote. And he actually has been talking about all of that, the words of appreciation. So the love languages go into a different depth. Of course, the physical touch, you want to be really careful.
Right. No HR. We don't want no claims.
Exactly. You don't need no sexual harassment.
Right. Or hostile work environment.
Exactly. Nothing like that.
Right.
But even with that, I think there's a specific decorum. For example, if you have a boss that, is a hugger, but, it's like a group thing, I think that's okay. I think if it's a one-on-one, it's definitely not. It's not okay. But even then, just don't touch anybody. Just don't do it.
Yes.
Just don't do it. But what is your love language? I'm actually curious.
My love language particularly is actions. It's doing stuff. It's super funny, but my father always likes to use the word, honey, do this, honey, do that, right? And I learned that in my household because my father would show his love for my mother by doing things for her. Honey, I need these curtains up. Honey, I need this fixed. And my dad would go and do it, right? He was the handy daddy.
Yeah.
So I learned growing up that if somebody loves you, they do things for you. They'll, make sure you have a sweater in the car if it's cold. They'll make sure, hey, did you get some lunch? If not, let me help you with that.
Right. And even in times of grief, when a person's there for you and they're cooking for you or they're giving you something to take care of you, that's definitely actions, you know? Yeah. It's interesting. I think for me, it's not so much word of appreciation, but it's more quality time. I like to spend quality time with somebody and make sure that, we have that time together. And also I like giving gifts to people. I don't like receiving gifts. But I'm more of a gift giver, which is interesting, right?
Yeah.
And so, I like that. I've met people that really, they just love to hug you and they're always like touching you all the time, which is fine.
And you're like, be no pressure.
At some point I'm like, it's all good.
Yeah.
just space, a little bit of space. I'm good. So we all have different love languages, which is really important for us to know how to speak to people in a way that makes them feel cared for, loved, and heard. And part of the coaching process, I'm a certified coach as well. And so I know you said you're on your website, I read that you're a coach. And one of the big things that we do as coaches is to actively and reflectively listen to our clients and hear what they have to say, because they might be saying one thing, but they're probably meaning something else in the background. And you have to be careful to listen to what exactly they really need and want. And I think that's also part of emotional intelligence, to understand behind the lines.
Yeah, we call it the secret message.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's an old Native American saying that says, if you hear the whispers, you don't have to hear the screams later.
Yeah. I like that. You don't have to hear it, because yes, that's true. You didn't hear them, they're going to scream at you and say, why didn't you listen to me? I really wanted you to do this.
Right.
Yeah. So in your business, in your therapy business, do you see a lot of clients who come to you telling you, hey, so-and-so doesn't listen to me, or, there's these issues going on. What do you like? What kind of advice do you give to them?
Well, I like to stay away from the word advise. I like to encourage them to act, according to what will benefit them in a healthy way. So the biggest thing I like to have them reflect on is this, and it's a key component. Usually what irritates us or bothers us or annoys us about others is usually about ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's not so much of the blame the victim idea, but it's more of reflection of it's like, well, if you're needing more time, more listening, is that something that you are giving? Come from a place of giving first, and then everything else will flow. And as they've done that, as they've gone home and filled their partner's cup, their cup is getting filled little by little, but also teaching them an important open dialogue of using the I feel statements. It's so small, but so important. And most people erroneously use the I feel followed by a thought versus a feeling. They say, I feel you should go to Target.
Because you're saying you.
Right. I feel you need to wash the dishes at 9 p.m. versus I feel sad or I feel happy, I feel irritated, blank.
Right.
Yeah.
Or like, for example, I feel irritated when you don't wash the dishes.
Exactly.
And rather than saying, well, I feel like you need to go do this.
Yes.
Because again, then you're kind of shifting that blame back on them, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think is followed by a thought. I feel is followed by a feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Something that I think we all need to understand, especially with within our management, leadership, HR. When we're talking to our colleagues, we're talking to the people that we're working with. How do we approach them in a way that we're letting them know what we're feeling, but we're not attacking them? They don't feel attacked, because a lot of employees sometimes feel like their managers are attacking them.
Yeah.
Because they're not really communicating properly in that sense, right? So what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's in that position?
As the leader or as the...
And both ways, as the leader and as the employee. Like for an employee, let's say I'm your employee.
Got it.
And I'm working with you, but the way that you express what you want me to do, let's say it doesn't come out right. And so I get angry, but I don't even know how to approach you. So there's this clash going on, right?
Yeah, I think that's where an open dialogue, open communication needs to be understood. And I think the best way just to, in the office setting is to do a survey. How do you feel heard the most? I feel appreciated blank when my supervisor does this, when my leader does this. And another big thing, just to self-awareness for leaders, is that there's a big difference between being a boss and then being a leader.
Yeah.
A leader shows by example. That it's saying, okay, let me take a step back. What happened here? What can I improve as far as this dynamic or what happened?
Yeah.
Versus a boss is just tell, but not showing.
Exactly.
It's show by example.
Right. And I agree with that 100%. And I always tell people, if you're going, you need to show yourself up by example.
Right. If you want them to be at 7, you better be there 6:50.
Exactly.
Showing them it's possible.
Exactly. Because and I think that's where people don't always do that. They're saying, well, you got to do this and you need to do that. But okay, are you doing the same thing?
Right.
And are you, because it's the lead by example, right? And if you're not leading by example, people are not learning from you.
Absolutely.
And that's known as transformational leadership. Right?
Yes.
Because you're teaching people through you taking the same actions.
Yes. One of the most interesting things or dynamics or patterns that I have found in the workplace and real life is that the way a leader leads is usually the way they parent. Yeah. And the same type of challenges they have with their children at home is the same ones they're having in the office.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an interesting parallel. Really, really interesting.
Because really, if the supervisees are, if anything, but children, they're following directions according to what needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because actually, in the think about it, I didn't really even think about it that way, where you are, looking at that person. How do you raise your child? If the way you're raising your child directly correlates the way you are with your coworkers, I mean, that's such a great correlation right there.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that the way we do one thing is the way we do everything.
Yeah.
There's a little derivative there, but not much. I think that the way, you eat your pizza is probably the way you're going to eat your tacos.
You're dribbling a mess.
Right. It's like Carl's Jr. It's not all in your face. It doesn't belong there.
Exactly, right. That's how they advertise.
That's right, yeah.
And I think that's so interesting. Let's talk about that for a moment. Advertising. They're using some sort of emotional intelligence to appeal to us.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And what kind of patterns do you see there with some of these commercials that we see on TV?
One of the biggest leaders that I absolutely love to take a shine on and highlight is Apple. All my money goes to Apple.
Okay.
I love
everything is Apple.
But mostly what I'm a big fan is if they include emotional intelligence, and this is how I'll tell you. A while back, they introduced this idea of, okay, I could send people red receipts. And it's this emotional intelligence of letting the receiver know, I hear you, I see you, I not necessarily validate you, but I understand that you send the message. It's letting the other person, I heard you. And once that option was available, there's a lot of people out there that were like, oh, they did read the message, but they chose not to respond. There was a big shift there in technology and communication and how we correlate with that.
You know, that's interesting because I turn my read receipts off. I don't want anyone to know when I read their text, and because you know, I sometimes might not respond right away just because I've got so much going on, and I don't want someone to say, I sent you a text, how come you didn't respond to me yet?
Right. So there's a big difference between reacting and responding. And this is what I'll share just on a personal note.
Yeah.
So I actually spoke about this yesterday, that I've made a pact with myself that I will not open an email, a call, or a text until I am ready to respond versus react.
Right.
And even if it takes just a little bit longer, I appreciate that about myself, holding me accountable, rather than to open something and it not later be misconstrued or it not be understood correctly.
Yeah.
Most of the time, if somebody says, hey sister, you know, you did this for mom, or you didn't, and you want to react versus respond, versus taking a moment, reading it when I'm ready to respond and saying, actually, yeah, I did give that to mom.
Yeah, I like that approach. That approach. But you know, and it's interesting that you say this about the read receipts that Apple put in there, because I never really thought of it like, oh, they put that in there because there was an emotional reason.
There always is.
Right. Well, Siri, I think, is one of those reasons. You know, having Siri on our phones and on our computers.
That, and we're pretty lazy as humans. The easier something will be, the more people are willing to purchase it. Yeah.
Alexa is one of them. Hey, Alexa, do this, or
you
know, order this and get that for me. And it's like, why don't you get up and get on the computer? Because you're right.
Right.
As human beings, the more easy we have it, the better it is. And technology is trying to make things easy for us.
Yes. And one of my favorite people, influential, is Warren Buffett. I think if he was just a little younger and I was a little older and he wasn't married, we would have gotten married. It's going to happen that way.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
On my Instagram a couple of weeks ago, I posted a picture. I forgot what it was, but I posted something. Guess who liked my photo?
Who?
Warren Buffett.
Really?
Yes.
How awesome.
So when you mentioned him, I'm like, oh my God, Warren Buffett actually. And so I looked and I'm like, really? Wait, is this him? I was so surprised. And it really made me feel like, hey, look, I am being seen and heard on Instagram.
Exactly.
And so let's talk about social media here for a moment, because I think this is one of the biggest areas where I feel like we need to really develop our emotional intelligence. Because there are people that got on Facebook and then they're like, the minute someone says something, I'm unfriending you, I'm blocking you, la 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 la. But you have to see this person in person. Okay. And I'm of that person that I don't believe unfriending somebody on Facebook means that they're done with them, because that's just ridiculous. But that's me. What is your take on this?
I think that emotional intelligence plays a huge part in technology. But the biggest thing I'll say is that when it comes to any type of conflict, that's actually a great sign. It means that either party or both are still invested in the relationship. If there's anything I learned from being a therapist, is that people should be extremely scared or worried when there's no more conflict. When there's no more conflict, it's there's no more attachment there. There's no more fight left in them for the relationship. So in regards to social media, I think that it's very important to interact as if you were still there. Example, in social media, you might leave somebody hanging with a comment and never reply back.
Which happens a little too
Right,
much.
Exactly. But it's just like a conversation. I wouldn't just leave here and expect you to just keep waiting until I responded.
Right.
So that's important to understand, that although it may be digital, we're still human.
Right. We're still responding. We're still talking to one another. Yeah. And so what do you have to say to those people who literally are like, I'm unfriending this person and I'm blocking this person because they're trying to cut that person out of their life? You know, on social media, at least that's how they're making it seem. But then they have to see them in person at an event or a party because they've got, you know, mutual people involved. They're networking or we're doing business together. And I've seen this. And so I'm kind of like, well, how do people react to that? Because it's always interesting to me to see it.
So once again, I think it's a big difference between reacting versus responding. A responding would understand that 80 to 90% of people don't understand that what others do and say has nothing to do with them.
Exactly.
Nothing. It has to do with what the other person is feeling. But our mistake is that we take it personal.
Yeah.
We say, oh, it's about us. No.
It's
Unfortunately, we're not that special. You know, we're special in all kinds of ways, but not in that way.
Yeah.
So it's choosing just not to carry those bags. I choose not to carry them at the grocery store.
Yeah. No, and that's a really, really good way to look at things, because, you know, that is something like that's happening on social media where, you know, maybe you're talking to somebody who was a business partner with you or something of that nature, and then something happened, they disagreed with you, and then there was an unfriending and a blocking going on social media. You have to be aware that you're going to still see them in person, and to just be kind and gracious and say hello and still be okay with them. Because in real life is still different from social media, I think.
Right.
You
Right.
know? And so we're having conversation on social media that's going to go outside of that. And then it's going to, because you and I, we met through LinkedIn.
Right.
So, you know, the interesting thing is she was at an officer training.
Yeah.
I wasn't conducting a training. One of my fellow colleagues was. And so you happened to be there, except I was going in and out that day.
Right.
I didn't know who was there. I was just there trying to make sure that Tamla had her
But that just
computer
shows you connections, right? It's like,
yeah. And you remembered me.
Yeah.
And see, that was the thing. She remembered me. I didn't know. And so she added me on LinkedIn. Zeahlot added me. And I'm like, okay, so we have mutual friends in common. Sure, I'll add her back, without realizing that actually she did meet me in person.
We have that Toastmasters in common.
We have the Toastmasters. Yeah. I mean, we had the people from Toastmasters in common. So then I posted about how I am actually, and by the way, everyone, I am working on creating an HR podcast. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to name it yet. I'm thinking Empowered HR or something, because I really want people to learn a lot about not only just leadership in general, but HR issues, because we have a lot of issues going on all the time. Laws are always changing constantly.
Right.
I'm part of
hostile work environment, all kinds of claims.
Exactly.
AP.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I'm part of the SHRM, Society of Human Resources, and part of the PIRA network. And, you know, so I'm with HR quite a bit. And so I see every day they're sending emails that something is just changing. There's something going on. And I'm like, okay, we got to do a podcast.
Yes.
And I'm really passionate about women in leadership. And we've got one woman right here, amazingly, who is a leader. And definitely we'll be bringing her back on my podcast as well as on this show. You know, she's on it now, and I'm always gonna bring back some of my repeat guests because, you know, we have a lot of golden nuggets to share. And with that said, you know, with HR, there's always this constant influx of changes and things going on. And I think that having the base of emotionally understanding things, especially for women. And so I kind of want to ask this question actually, because I am, since I'm really getting into this whole women in leadership, this is going to be my dissertation paper for my doctorate as well, hopefully, once it gets approved. But for women who are in positions of leadership, now, how should they ideally deal with emotions? Because we're told as women, either we're too aggressive, so there's a double bind. We're either too aggressive, or we're not aggressive enough and we're too weak, or we're too, you know, there's
you can't handle the situation.
Exactly. And so especially people like men will feel that women can't handle certain things and they try to come in and take over. And I've personally seen that in many situations. And so I kind of want to know, how can a woman handle their emotions properly in that sense when they're seeing this happening? And what should they do to show themselves that, yes, they can be aggressive, but at the same time nurturing?
That's a great question. And I think that goes for all genders, not necessarily women, but it's really just checking in with yourself first. Self-awareness, meditating, just asking, what do I feel in this moment? My biggest thing in growing emotional intelligence is the underlying triggers. Can you identify them in the moment? Why is the situation / person or what they're saying triggering me? And really understanding, who are they speaking to? Are they speaking to the full-fledged adult that is right here in this moment, or the wounded child inside? Most of the time, our triggers are speaking to the wounded part of us, the lost self, the shadow self. But when we're not triggered and we could stay fully in the moment and actually respond versus react, we are the adult responding.
And you're absolutely right with that. I hope you're all taking home all these golden nuggets that
diamonds, girl, diamonds.
They're diamonds, exactly. They're diamonds. Hopefully you guys are taking notes and taking them home with you, because there's so much information. And I think that what you talk about is really, really, it's so beneficial. We need to know this, you know, not just as leaders or managers or people who are within the HR world, but I think in everyone in general. I mean, we need to know this for the way that we have our relationships with people, with our children, with our spouses, with our friends and family members. And we don't take accountability for our emotions. We don't take accountability for our feelings and the way that we need to speak to others with that respect and that kindness and that love. And I'm glad that you're sharing with us all of this. So any last tips, tricks?
Yeah, anything? You know, I'll share this in regards to what you just shared. It's very sad, I think, that, you know, for those that were raised or went through the educational system for the U.S., I'll speak for that, right? I went through the educational system here in the U.S. We'd learn about math and science, and 2 + 2 is 4, and if you add this A plus this B, you know, this is what you're going to get. Unfortunately, we are never taught about 2 main principles of our lives, which are financial literacy and education and emotional development. These are 2 areas we never learn in school that run our lives. Show me anybody that knew how to run a credit card correctly or how to use one and how to do checks and balances on a bank account walking out of high school.
Nobody.
Barely. There's a couple there, but that's because of their parents or their upbringing. And also show me a child that's emotionally regulated fully and can manage that at home as well as within school. No. None of that is available. So unfortunately, we have all these wounded adults walking around wondering, why do they hate me? Why do they treat me like this? But it's really self-ownership of their development.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. And I think that that's such a great takeaway to end our show today, because really, you know, we need to stay accountable to what we're doing.
Right.
We have to have that accountability. Yeah. So absolutely.
Once you get correct, you can ask other people to come correct.
Exactly.
Yes. Get right.
Exactly. That's how it works. That's how it works. Well, Zeahlot, thank you so much for being on my show today on Live, Lead, and Inspire. And I cannot wait to hear more about what you're doing. And, you know, by the way, all her information, if you want to get in touch with her, if you want to book a session with her, anything like that, all of her information is below the video. So just scroll below. You'll see.
Click.
Exactly. Click and follow her on social media. She's
social media handle is Vida Therapy, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. Vida Therapy, VIDA Therapy.
Perfect. Vida Therapy. So follow her today and get in touch with her if you want, because she's got a lot of great things to talk about. With that said, thank you so much for being on the show once again. And thank you for listening and taking in all of our golden nuggets, diamonds, and tips. So please stay tuned for the next episode of ASIA TV. Till then, have a great one. Bye-bye.